I think the thing I remember most about Clint Eastwood is that a year or so later, I hadn't yet had a lot of success, and
He was the face of strength and charm on TV screens across America. But behind the scenes, Robert Urich was fighting battles no script could prepare him for. Alongside his wife, Heather Menzies, he built a life defined not by fame, but by resilience, love, and purpose. What really happened behind Hollywood's polished image? And how did their quiet legacy outshine even the brightest stars? This is the story you didn't see on screen, one of heartbreak, hope, and lasting impact. Robert Michael Urich was born on December 19, 1946, in Toronto, Ohio, not to be confused with the Canadian city of the same name. His parents, John Paul and Cecilia Monica Urich, came from Rusin and Slovak backgrounds, and he was raised in the Byzantine Catholic tradition. He grew up in a working-class household where values like discipline, loyalty, and hard work were taken seriously. From a young age, Urich was a standout. He wasn't just the type to blend into the crowd. He was a natural athlete and a leader among his peers. His drive and discipline earned him a football scholarship to Florida State University, where he joined the team as a backup center. During his time there, he crossed paths with another future star, Burt Reynolds. Although they were in different stages of their lives, this early meeting would plant the seed of a lifelong friendship and professional connection. While his teammates might have been focused on athletic careers, Urich was already thinking ahead. He earned a degree in radio and television communications, and later took his education further by completing a master's degree in broadcast research and management at Michigan State University. It was clear even then that he wasn't content to follow a narrow path. He wanted to understand the media world from all angles. After university, he started working at WGN-TV in Chicago, selling advertising for a modest salary. Around this time, he also enrolled in voice classes at the University of Chicago, honing the skills that would later help him in front of the camera. But there was one small problem. Urich had already started moonlighting as an actor on the side, and when his employer found out, they let him go. That setback, however, would turn out to be a turning point. Determined to make a proper go at acting, he turned his focus fully to performing. In the early 1970s, Urich performed in a stage production of The Rainmaker in Chicago. The play, which also featured his old college friend Burt Reynolds, marked the beginning of a new chapter. Reynolds, by then gaining momentum in Hollywood, encouraged Urich to take the plunge and move to Los Angeles. That single push was all Urich needed. Once in LA, it didn't take long for things to start happening. His first television role came in 1972 with a small part on The FBI, a long-running crime drama. Although it was a brief appearance, it opened the door to more auditions. Just a year later, he landed a lead role in a TV adaptation of Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. Unfortunately, the show was short-lived, canceled after just 6 episodes due to poor ratings. Still, Urich kept going. He made his film debut in Magnum Force in 1973, playing a motorcycle cop with a dark side. The film, a sequel to Dirty Harry, starred Clint Eastwood and gave Urich his first taste of working on a major Hollywood production. While his role wasn't large, it showed that he could hold his own alongside big names and in more serious material. The following year brought another opportunity, this time thanks again to Burt Reynolds. Reynolds had the ear of television producer Aaron Spelling, and he suggested Urich for a role in a new action-packed police series called SWAT. Spelling gave him a chance, and Urich landed the role of Officer Jim Street, a cool-headed member of an elite tactical unit. The show, though introduced as a mid-season replacement, quickly gained a large following. SWAT was packed with high-stakes action and a style that fit the times. Although it only lasted 2 seasons, Urich's performance didn't go unnoticed. He'd proven that he had on-screen presence and an easy likability that connected with viewers. From there, he started to explore a wider range of roles. In 1977, he showed off his comedic chops in Soap, playing a tennis player in the satirical sitcom. That same year, he was cast in Tabitha, a spin-off of the beloved show Bewitched. He played Paul Thurston, a self-absorbed talk show host. Although the show started strong, network scheduling issues led to its early cancellation. But the ups and downs of early cancellations didn't stop Urich's momentum. In 1978, he landed the role that would make him a household name, Dan Tana in Vega Tallers. The show, created by Aaron Spelling, centered on a private investigator navigating the glitzy but dangerous world of Las Vegas. The role was a perfect fit for Urich. He had the look, chiseled, charismatic, but never over the top. And he brought a grounded energy to a character surrounded by flash and chaos. To prepare for the role, Urich trained hard, reportedly adding 40 pounds of muscle to give the character a tougher edge. The transformation paid off. Vega Tallers became an instant hit, and Urich was at the center of it. For 3 seasons, he brought Dan Tana to life, solving crimes in the back alleys of the Strip while cruising around in a red Ford Thunderbird. The show earned him 2 Golden Globe nominations and cemented his status as a TV star. But television is a business that doesn't always reward consistency. By 1981, Vega Tallers was losing steam in the ratings. ABC decided not to renew it, and the show was canceled after 3 seasons. Still, Urich's career was far from over. After Vega Tallers, Urich signed a contract with MGM and began to shift his attention toward film roles. His first project under the new deal was Endangered Species, a science fiction thriller. Although it didn't become a box office hit, it allowed him to stretch creatively and explore a different side of his craft. That said, television continued to be where Urich found his strongest footing. The roles kept coming, and so did the opportunities. His ability to switch between drama, action, and comedy made him a valuable presence in an era when television was becoming more ambitious. By the early 1980s, Robert Urich had successfully made the jump from promising newcomer to established star. He hadn't taken shortcuts. Instead, he built his career role by role, always showing up prepared, professional, and completely committed. His appeal wasn't based on celebrity antics or controversy. People liked Robert Urich because he seemed real, someone you'd trust, someone who made the characters he played feel genuine. That trust and relatability would serve him well in the years ahead, especially as he took on roles that demanded more emotional depth. But the road to becoming one of television's most dependable stars didn't happen overnight. It took years of quiet persistence, sharp choices, and an unwavering work ethic, all of which were already clear during this early part of his journey. In 1996, Robert Urich was at a stable point in his career. He had just wrapped up the first season of The Lazarus Man, a Western drama that had brought him back into the spotlight in a meaningful way. The series showed a different side of him, one that was a bit darker, more introspective. Viewers responded positively, and the show was renewed for a second season. It looked like Urich had found another winning role. But just as things were looking up professionally, he received devastating news. He had been diagnosed with synovial sarcoma, a rare and aggressive form of cancer that affects the soft tissues of the body. It's the kind of diagnosis that changes everything in an instant. Despite the gravity of his condition, Urich remained determined not to let the illness define him. At first, he kept the diagnosis private, but when word eventually spread, it became clear that not everyone in the industry was willing to stand by him. The production company behind The Lazarus Man, Castle Rock Entertainment, made the decision to cancel the show without consulting him. They didn't ask whether he was still capable of working. They simply pulled the plug. Urich later spoke out about the cancellation. He was disappointed, not just because the show had promise, but because he felt that he had been written off too quickly. Still, he didn't waste time with bitterness. Instead, he filed a breach of contract lawsuit against the studio. The case was eventually settled out of court, but the message was clear. He wasn't going to be treated as expendable just because he was sick. Rather than retreat from the public eye, Urich chose to speak up. He began using his platform to raise awareness about cancer and to advocate for medical research. He appeared at fundraisers, spoke to media outlets, and took on the role of spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. He became a symbol of strength and hope, not because he claimed to be fearless, but because he showed up and kept going even when things got hard. Throughout his treatment, Urich continued to work. In 1997, he hosted Vital Signs, a documentary series about medical science. That same year, he also hosted Boatworks, a PBS program that explored the craftsmanship behind boat building. These weren't glamorous Hollywood roles, but they mattered. They allowed him to stay active, to keep contributing, and to share knowledge with audiences in a different way. By 1998, doctors declared him cancer-free. For a while, it seemed like the worst was behind him. And in true Urich fashion, he didn't let the experience just pass by. He turned it into action. He and his wife, Heather Menzies, established the Robert Urich Fund for Sarcoma Research at the University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Center. They wanted to do more than raise awareness. They wanted to help find a cure. Their commitment went beyond just putting their names on a charity. When Urich appeared on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, he won $125,000. Instead of keeping the money, he donated the full amount to the Cancer Fund. That act wasn't about publicity, it was about purpose. He and Heather believed that with enough funding, research, and time, others could be spared the same ordeal. The following years brought a mix of personal triumphs and professional challenges. Urich returned to television once again, this time in Love Boat: The Next Wave, where he played Captain Jim Kennedy III. The series ran for 2 seasons on UPN and gave him a chance to return to lighter, more familiar territory. He also made his Broadway debut in Chicago, playing the charismatic lawyer Billy Flynn. For Urich, the stage was a new and exciting challenge, and he took it on with the same energy and discipline that had guided him throughout his career. His performance received praise, and he later toured with the production, proving that his versatility extended far beyond television. But even as he seemed to be moving forward, the cancer was never far behind. In late 2001, Urich revealed in an interview that doctors had found new growths. It was a crushing blow after several years of remission. Still, he remained hopeful. A new medication had shown promise, and he continued to believe that he could beat the disease again. By April 2002, his health had deteriorated. He was admitted to Los Robles Hospital and Medical Center in Thousand Oaks, California, with breathing difficulties. A week later, on April 16th, he passed away. He was 55 years old. His wife Heather and their 3 children were by his side in his final moments. His death marked the end of a career that had been defined not only by talent, but by resilience. In the wake of his passing, tributes poured in, not just from fans, but from colleagues and cancer researchers who had worked alongside him. He wasn't just remembered for the characters he played, but for the way he handled his illness, with honesty, determination, and a clear desire to make a difference. The Robert Urich Fund continued its work after his death, with Heather taking on the mantle of leadership. She became an outspoken advocate for cancer patients and research, ensuring that her husband's mission would carry on. Their combined efforts made a lasting impact on sarcoma research, providing both funding and visibility for a disease that was often overlooked. In his hometown of Toronto, Ohio, a highway interchange was named in his honor, recognizing both his professional achievements and his personal courage. He also received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, located at 7083 Hollywood Boulevard. For many years, he was the only person with a surname beginning with the letter U to have a star. Eventually, he was joined by musician Usher. For those who knew him, Robert Urich's battle with cancer wasn't the defining feature of his life, but it was a testament to his character. He never let it make him bitter, and he never used it to gain sympathy. Instead, he used it as a way to help others, to speak out for those who didn't have a voice, and to show that even in the darkest times, there was room for hope. Heather Margaret Brotherston Menzies was born on December 3, 1949, in Toronto, Canada. Her parents were Scottish immigrants who had moved to Canada after the Second World War in search of better opportunities. Her father worked as an artist, though not one who found widespread commercial success. The family moved frequently in search of stability, and by the time Heather was a teenager, she had already lived in several cities, including Vancouver, Miami, London, and Southern California. As a young girl, Heather was interested in the arts. She graduated from John Burroughs High School in Burbank, California in 1967, and later pursued acting training at Falcon Studios University of the Arts. It was a path not without its difficulties. She had no formal experience in performance when she began, but she had an instinct for the craft and an unmistakable screen presence that helped her stand out. Heather's big break came at the age of 14 when she was cast as Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music. The film was a global success, and while Heather's role was part of an ensemble, it gave her exposure and a foothold in the entertainment industry. One memorable moment came during the famous rowboat scene. A young co-star who played Gretel fell into the lake and struggled to swim. Without hesitation, Heather dove in and pulled her to safety. That sense of instinctive care and responsibility would follow her throughout life, both personally and professionally. Following The Sound of Music, Heather continued to act in television and film. She appeared in series such as Bonanza, Dragnet, Alias Smith and Jones, Room 222, Marcus Welby, MD, T.J. Hooker, and later in Vega Terres, where she acted alongside her husband. She also took roles in films like Hawaii, How Sweet It Is, Piranha, and Endangered Species. In 1973, she posed for Playboy in a feature called Tender Trap, a nod to her roots in The Sound of Music. The photo shoot was relatively tame by modern standards, and she later said it was part of exploring who she was beyond her early child star image. Heather met Robert Urich in 1974 while filming a commercial. In a bit of irony, the ad featured them pretending to get married. That pretend wedding quickly turned into a real connection. They married the following year, in 1975, and remained together until Robert's death in 2002. Over the years, the couple adopted 3 children, Ryan, Emily, and later, Allison. Their home was known to be a loving, grounded place, far removed from the typical chaos often associated with Hollywood. It wasn't always an easy journey. The couple experienced several miscarriages before turning to adoption, but they were committed to building a family, and they did it with care and intention. Heather embraced motherhood wholeheartedly, raising her children with values that reflected her upbringing: kindness, humility, and perseverance. During Robert's illness, Heather was more than a supportive spouse. She became his partner in advocacy, helping to manage not just his medical care, but also their shared mission to raise awareness about cancer and support research efforts. Together, they established the Robert Urich Fund for Sarcoma Research at the University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Center. It was a cause that grew deeply personal for both of them, and Heather continued to carry that work forward even after Robert passed away. His death in 2002 was a devastating loss. They had been married for 27 years, and by all accounts, theirs was a partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. For Heather, the grief was enormous, but she didn't retreat into private mourning. Instead, she turned her focus even more deeply toward advocacy. She founded the Robert Urich Foundation, a nonprofit organization aimed at funding cancer research and providing support for patients and families going through similar battles. In her public appearances, Heather often spoke with quiet conviction. She wasn't someone who sought the spotlight, but when she did speak, people listened. She brought a human face to a disease that could otherwise feel overwhelming and impersonal. Through events, fundraising, and partnerships with medical institutions, she worked to ensure that Robert's legacy would not just be remembered, but would actively improve lives. Heather had faced cancer herself. Years before Robert's diagnosis, she had been treated for ovarian cancer. That personal experience gave her a deep understanding of the challenges that come with illness, not just physically, but emotionally and financially as well. Her efforts through the foundation were shaped by that knowledge. She wasn't working from a distance. She was speaking from lived experience. Beyond advocacy, Heather continued to stay involved in her community. In Park City, Utah, where the Urich family had spent a lot of time, she helped raise funds for the construction of the Eccles Performing Arts Center at Park City High School. After Robert's death, the school established the Robert Urich Scholarship in his memory, an award given to students who showed exceptional dedication to the arts. Heather supported this cause wholeheartedly, often attending performances and staying in touch with students and faculty involved in the program. But life had one more challenge in store. In November 2017, Heather was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. The diagnosis came suddenly, and the disease progressed quickly. Just 4 weeks later, on December 24, 2017, she passed away at the age of 68. Her children were with her, and according to her son Ryan, she was not in pain in her final days. She died peacefully, surrounded by the family she had loved and nurtured. Her passing was mourned by fans of her early work and by the countless people who had been touched by her efforts in cancer advocacy. In the years since, her children, especially Ryan, have continued to speak publicly about the impact both of their parents had on their lives and the lives of others. The Robert Urich Foundation continues to operate, driven by the same principles that guided Heather and Robert during their lifetime: compassion, courage, and service. Heather Menzies' life might have started with a role in one of the most beloved musicals in history, but it was her quiet work behind the scenes that ultimately defined her. She wasn't interested in fame for its own sake. What mattered to her was connection, purpose, and making a difference in the lives of people facing real struggles. She once described her marriage to Robert as something built on deep friendship and mutual respect. They weren't just partners in life, they were partners in fighting back against one of the toughest diseases anyone can face. Together, they created a legacy that lives on not just in films or TV reruns, but in hospitals, research centers, and in the lives of the people they supported and inspired. Becoming parents wasn't easy for Robert and Heather. After experiencing multiple miscarriages, they decided to grow their family through adoption. Their first 2 children, Ryan and Emily, were born in 1978 and 1980. Then, almost 2 decades later, they adopted their youngest daughter, Allison, in 1998. Each child was welcomed into a home filled with stability, love, and purpose. Robert Urich was known not just as a working actor, but as a deeply involved father. He wasn't the kind of parent who kept his emotions at a distance or ran the household with a strict hand. Instead, he was present, open, and emotionally available. When Ryan got in trouble at school, Robert didn't rush to punish. He got down to eye level and asked what was really going on. That kind of approach left a lasting impact. His parenting extended to celebrating even the smallest milestones. With his daughters, he took every opportunity to express pride and encouragement. Even in the middle of his cancer treatments, when his energy was low and his body weakened, he made time to be playful and present. Just days before Allison's 4th birthday, he was still able to engage with her, smiling through the pain, focused entirely on his family. Ryan Urich, the oldest of the 3, has since spoken publicly about how those final years shaped the rest of his life. As his father's illness progressed, Ryan often drove him to chemotherapy appointments. The drives became quiet moments filled with care, each bump in the road carefully avoided to prevent any additional pain. It was a tender, heartbreaking time that ultimately became a turning point for Ryan. Watching his father suffer, feeling powerless to help, planted a seed. Ryan decided to pursue medicine. He wanted to be in a position to offer the kind of help he couldn't give his dad. Years later, he became a doctor, an infectious disease specialist with Lovelace Medical Group in New Mexico. In interviews, he shared that his career choice was a direct result of his father's illness and his desire to do something meaningful with his life. His sister Emily also found her calling in medicine, now working as an emergency room nurse. Though she has remained more private than her brother, her choice of career speaks volumes about the values instilled in her. Allison, the youngest, has lived more quietly, but like her siblings, she was raised in a home where kindness, resilience, and service were everyday values, not just words. The legacy of Robert and Heather isn't limited to their family's career choices. The Robert Urich Foundation continues to raise money for cancer research and support programs for patients and their families. The foundation also provides scholarships and remains involved in community outreach, all of which help preserve the spirit of generosity that defined both Robert and Heather. In many ways, their story offers a striking contrast to another well-known figure who played an important role in Robert Urich's early career, Burt Reynolds. The two had known each other since college, when they both attended Florida State University. Reynolds, older and already on the path to stardom, helped guide Robert during his early steps into acting. He was the one who encouraged Urich to move to Los Angeles, telling him that he had what it took to succeed. Professionally, the advice paid off. But while Robert Urich built a reputation for humility, stability, and family devotion, Burt Reynolds' personal life took a very different route. By the 1980s, Reynolds was one of the biggest names in Hollywood. He was charming, good-looking, and seemed to embody the spirit of the times. But his off-screen life was often marked by turbulence. Nowhere was that more obvious than in his marriage to actress Lonnie Anderson. At first glance, they seemed like the ultimate celebrity couple. He was the star of films like Smokey and the Bandit and Deliverance, while she was best known for her role in WKRP in Cincinnati. Their relationship was widely covered in the media, filled with public appearances and tabloid headlines. They married in 1988, but behind the scenes, their relationship was far less glamorous. Over time, the marriage became strained, filled with arguments, differing expectations, and eventually, allegations of abuse and financial irresponsibility. In 1993, Reynolds filed for divorce, and what followed was one of the most public and bitter separations in Hollywood history. Both sides made damaging claims. Reynolds accused Anderson of spending recklessly, worsening his growing financial problems. Anderson countered with accusations of emotional and physical abuse. The divorce made headlines for months and became something of a spectacle. For Reynolds, it was more than just a personal loss. It was a turning point in his career. Already facing a decline in film roles, the legal and financial fallout from the divorce pushed him into bankruptcy. Eventually, Reynolds filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1996. At the time, he owed more than $10 million. His lifestyle had become unsustainable, and the combination of career downturns and legal battles made recovery difficult. He later admitted to borrowing money from friends just to make alimony payments and keep up with daily expenses. But the turmoil didn't stop there. After the end of his marriage, Reynolds became involved in another long-term relationship with a woman named Pamela Seals. That relationship also ended in legal trouble, with Seals accusing Reynolds of emotional abuse and seeking financial compensation. Reynolds, in turn, accused her of trying to extort money, claiming she had threatened to go public with false allegations if he didn't agree to her terms. Eventually, the legal conflict was resolved, but by then, Reynolds' personal life had been shaped as much by controversy as by his screen roles. While he remained a respected actor, especially for standout performances in films like Boogie Nights, the contrast between his public image and private struggles became harder to ignore. In comparing the lives of Robert Urich and Burt Reynolds, what stands out is not just their career trajectories, but the choices they made along the way. Both were talented. Both had charisma and screen presence. But while Reynolds' life was marked by financial instability, public breakups, and legal battles, Urich chose a quieter path. He focused on his family, stayed away from scandal, and used his fame as a tool for good. It's not a matter of who was more successful, but rather how they defined success. For Robert Urich, it was about making meaningful connections through his roles, his advocacy, and most of all, through his relationships with family and friends. For Burt Reynolds, it was often about living large, pushing boundaries, and learning lessons the hard way. Despite their differences, the friendship between the two endured over the years. Reynolds never forgot the role he played in helping Urich get started, and Urich, for his part, remained grateful for the support. It's a reminder that people can have very different lives and still find common ground, even if their paths take them in opposite directions. Today, Robert Urich's name might not appear in headlines as often, but his influence continues through the work of his children, through the ongoing efforts of the foundation, and in the memory of viewers who saw something genuine in his performances. Burt Reynolds, who passed away in 2018, is also remembered for his contributions to film and television, though often through the lens of both brilliance and controversy. In the end, both men left their mark, but Robert Urich's legacy stands as a quiet but powerful example of how to live with integrity, even when life becomes incredibly difficult. His was a story defined not by headlines, but by heart.